When I started my pro-life career about 10 or 12 years ago, I had this interesting moment where I was doing some research and I found some quotations from some pro-choice academics who were saying to their pro-choice movement, here are some things not to say. Like, we're pro-choice, but don't say this or it makes us look silly. So like someone would say, don't say life doesn't begin in conception. Because like, it totally does. And you make us seem like we're anti-science if you say that, so say something better. Or there was someone that was saying, like, you know, when people hold up the graphic pictures, the pro-lifers hold up graphic pictures, like, be careful what you say because those pictures might be true. So it's just very interesting. So I started reading these quotations and I had an interesting kind of an internal response to that, which was, I had some respect for those pro-choice academics who said those things. Because there was an intellectual honesty that has to be present for you to be able to look outside of your group, outside of what most of the people in your group are saying, and say, that part actually doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And it was clear what the motive was. We want more people to become pro-choice. We want to become more persuasive. And I looked around and was like, well, do we have anyone in the pro-life movement that does that? And there really wasn't. And so I thought, well, maybe I'll be the guy, you know, try to help pro-life people. Like, what are the things we shouldn't say? Because not all pro-life arguments are created equal. There's like, I think of pro-life arguments and tactics as all tools in a toolbox. But some tools are better than others. There are some arguments that are just that just don't work for where pro-choice people are coming from. There's some other arguments that are actually, I think, true arguments, but just once again, like on a pragmatic level, are just not that persuasive to at least pro-choice college students who are the people that I have the most experience with. So kind of my attitude of this is, as I said in the last talk, is I don't see myself as like this guru or something like that, like I'm way up here and you're all down here. It's like I've been up the mountain, meaning I've had about 1,000 conversations with pro-choice people and have learned a lot of things and made a lot of mistakes while doing that, and I'm back and I want to tell you what I've learned. So that you can have better dialogues with pro-choice people. The word effective is like corporate buzzword bingo, but effectiveness really matters when we're talking to pro-choice people who might kill their babies or who might encourage other people to kill their babies. My goal is I want to change their minds. I want them to become pro-life so that they won't kill their babies. And usually, unless you're friends, like a long-term friendship with a pro-choice person, which you should totally do, but that's a different talk, you usually have a very limited amount of time with someone and a limited amount of things you can say. So even for some of the things that I'm going to pick on in this talk a little bit, it's like, maybe even if they're true and would be helpful to a few people, pick the things that are going to be helpful to the most people, that are going to be persuasive to the most people, so you're using your time and your arguments well. Does that make sense? It's really important that you understand my attitude before I launch into this talk, because it is very trendy right now for people to bash the pro-life movement, especially pro-life leaders that have been involved for longer than I've been alive. It's become trendy for like activists to be like, well, you guys have clearly failed because abortion's still legal, so obviously you're all failures and you don't know what you're doing. And so I'm going to make a bunch of memes and a bunch of statements about how you guys are all idiots and if only I was in charge. I am not in that camp. I love the pro-life movement. The pro-life movement is awesome. Like, just take 40 Days for Life as an example. My good friend David B. Wright launched this thing. There's now 650,000 people have prayed for at least an hour outside of their local abortion clinic and or offered help to people that are abortion vulnerable, that are thinking that abortion is the only option that they have. Many of them have done it in the snow or in the 110-degree desert of Fresno. It's like, here's wonderful people, and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of babies have been saved. What a beautiful movement we're in. So I don't have this negative, like, if only everyone understood what I understood kind of an attitude. What I do want to see us do is get a little bit better at dialogue. I think all of us, no matter how good you are at dialogue on this issue, could get a little bit better. And that is the goal of this talk. What are some arguments that I have found to not work that often with pro-choice people? So here's some tools I'm going to encourage you to either take out of your toolbox or at least put them at the bottom of the pile so that you can use other ones that I think are more effective. So I'm going to talk about 5 faulty arguments and 3 faulty tactics. I know your program said there'd be 9 faulty pro-life arguments. I changed it to 8 last night because I only have time for 8. You can come and ask me at my booth what the 9th one would have been if you want to know, but I'm not going to tell you. I'm just going to raise too much hell for that one. So faulty pro-life argument number 1. Here's something I don't think is very helpful. Your mother chose life. Like, it seems so weird to us sometimes when we're talking to a pro-choice person. It's like, don't you realize you were once a fetus? Your mom could have killed you, she didn't, and that's why you're here, like, able to be here and be pro-choice. Like, that just seems so, like, odd. Like, don't you understand your mom didn't have an abortion, so you should be pro-life because your mom didn't have an abortion. And here's why this isn't very helpful for most pro-choice people. Because a pro-choice person typically does not believe that the unborn is a person. They think it's a potential person. It'll become a person later, either towards the end of the pregnancy, or maybe at birth, or towards or in the first month of life outside the womb. Like, that's typically when pro-choice people think that you start mattering. When you have a sentient human being who has desires and is minimally self-aware and all these. I know this is very different from our view, but we have to understand pro-choice people and where they're coming from if we're going to communicate well to them, right? So this is where they're coming from. For the pro-choice person who hears your mom chose life, he's like, yeah. So my mom happened to have the circumstances where she didn't need to have an abortion. That's great, but if she had had an abortion, I wouldn't have known the difference. Like, it wouldn't have mattered to me. Like, and depending on what they believe in the soul, maybe they believe in reincarnation. Maybe they think their soul would have been in some other kid's body. Maybe they just think their soul would have never happened. Whatever. Either way, they're going to feel like it doesn't matter to me. I would want my mom to have the legal right to have an abortion if her circumstances were different than my mom's were. So I've seen this tried several times, and instantly the pro-choice person just reacts and just immediately you've lost rapport now. It's like now they're thinking that this person doesn't make very good arguments. It's like, don't give them that opportunity. If they're going to write you off, have them write you off for stupid reasons. They're just not taking you seriously because they're pro-choice. But I don't want to give them a good reason to write me off, right? So your mother chose life, I don't think is that helpful. Here's another one. The Bible is pro-life. So if you're talking to a pro-choice Christian, I have a syllogism for you to use based on Bible verses, and I could totally do that. I just don't use that argument that often because I don't talk to a lot of pro-choice Christians. I'm willing to, it's just I just don't meet a lot. I meet a lot of pro-choice atheists and agnostics. And atheists and agnostics don't take the Bible as seriously as I do. I believe the Bible is the inerrant word of God. I think what the Bible says really, really matters. But atheists don't. In fact, some atheists think that the Bible's silly. So I've been discriminated against by college students as soon as they find out I'm a Christian. Which is why I hold those cards usually close to the chest until I feel like I've gained the kind of rapport where I can now share this more intimate part of me and have them not just storm off. Like, oh, I can't believe I was talking to this idiot. That's happened to me. But it's so for that person, Bible verses that are pro-life are not going to be that helpful. It'd be like if a Muslim person came to you and opened up a Quran and said, I'm going to prove to you today that Islam is true based on this book. What are you going to say? You're going to be like, well, I don't think your book is true. You might say, there might be some wise principles of life in your book, but I don't think it's the word of God. But we do that. We're like, oh, you're pro-choice? Oh, Psalm 139 says that God knit you in your mother's womb. And Jeremiah 1:5 says that God knew you before time began. And in the New Testament, you've got second trimester John the Baptist kicking in his mother's womb in the presence of first trimester Jesus. And the atheist is like, but I don't believe your book. I think your book was written 2,000 years ago by guys who heard voices in their heads. That's what they think. So I'm not saying to hide your Christianity from people, but it's not usually my first move. I want to establish a rapport using the things that we can agree on, science and philosophy. The pro-life position is true, so we can win on those grounds. And then later, sometimes when they find out, oh wow, this person really knows what they're talking about, then they'll take your religious view seriously. And I have lots of stories to back that up, but I'm going to go relatively quickly through these because I want to have a little bit of time for Q&A in this workshop. So that's my view on that. Number 3, abortion is wrong, or abortion should be illegal because it's hurting the economy. What if abortion was not hurting the economy? What if the Freakonomics guys are right and that abortion is really helping the economy? Like, I don't know if you've heard of Freakonomics, but it's these guys that are like, and like whether or not their data is good, like their reasoning is good, but their argument is that there's less crime now because a lot of the people who have abortions live in the kind of neighborhoods where future criminals grow up. And so the more abortions happen, the crime rate goes down. Like, let's say you buy that argument. Let's say you think that the way they're doing like a reasoning from the data is fair. Does that make you pro-choice? Of course not. Because it's wrong to kill babies whether or not they're going to become future criminals, right? So pro-choice people don't become pro-life just because we're arguing that abortion is messing up Social Security. It's really important to understand the difference. As my friend Jay Watts at Life Training Institute, I think he said it best. He said there's a difference between what's wrong with abortion and why abortion is wrong. There is a difference between what's wrong with abortion and why abortion is wrong. Abortion is wrong because it kills an innocent human being without proper justification. There's all kinds of things wrong with abortion. I think abortion hurts women. Abortion it probably hurts the economy. Abortion is like damaging the soul of our nation. But that's not why abortion is wrong. So I want to stay crystal clear with the pro-choice person. Here's why I think abortion should be illegal. I'm not just arguing it's wrong. I'm swinging for the fences. I want them to be convinced that abortion should be against the law. And that informs the way that I'm making my argument. So abortion is wrong because it hurts the economy. I just don't think that's going to persuade pro-choice people. They might think it's interesting if they're pro-life. Might be like one other reason to be extra pro-life. But I don't think it'll change pro-choice minds. This one's going to get a little closer to home. Once again, I've used all of these, okay? So this is not me pointing fingers. This is me, I've learned from some mistakes. Because I'm arguing that abortion should be illegal, I don't think it is a good argument to prove that by telling people how abortion hurts women. I do think abortion hurts women. I think abortion physically hurts lots of women. I think there are women that have a higher rate of breast cancer if they abort, especially their first pregnancy. I think the best interpretation of all the data on that is on our site on that. I think abortion emotionally harms most to all women who have abortions. Maybe not right away, but maybe years later when they start having kids. But there are all kinds of things that are physically or emotionally harmful that we think we should keep legal. Like just proving that something physically or emotionally harms doesn't it necessarily prove that thing should be illegal. Smoking cigarettes. Now it's like there might be a few people that disagree with me. I don't think that we should make it against the law to smoke cigarettes. Maybe we do education campaigns. Maybe we make the taxes crazy, so it's like really hard to fund that kind of an addiction. But I don't think we should put you in jail for smoking cigarettes, even though that physically hurts you and causes some kind of physical harm for people that are around you a lot. It's going to come down to how big do you want government to be? And I don't want government getting into that area. What about things that are emotionally painful? I don't think adultery should be illegal. I think adultery is one of the worst things you can do. And almost all of society agrees with that. The number one moral issue that there's the most common ground in our country is the issue of adultery. Because over 90% agree that adultery is wrong. But I don't think we should put people in jail for it. Now, if you want to argue with me, I'll be at my booth. We can talk about that. But I think it's fine to talk about this sometimes. I'm not saying never talk about abortion hurting women. If you're a sidewalk counselor, you probably should talk about how abortion hurts women. Meaning if you're on the sidewalks in front of abortion clinics, that's a different kind of a conversation than what I'm talking about. Where I'm trying to have careful, thoughtful, philosophically nuanced conversations with pro-choice people because I want them to change their minds over a period of time. It's different when they're thinking about having an abortion that day. If they're thinking about having an abortion that day, you might need to focus on how abortion might hurt them because that might be the thing that they care about that day. But if I'm friends with a pro-choice person, this isn't my initial argument. We might talk about that at some point, way down the road, but I'm going to be very careful about the way I do. And here's the reason. So I don't think this is still the sign in front of the San Francisco March for Life, but at least it used to be that the big banner in front of the March for Life said women deserve better than abortion. That was the thing for several years. And I just don't think that says enough. Like, women deserve better than vanilla ice cream. I don't think that Baskin-Robbins should be banned from selling it. I love women. Women deserve peanut butter chocolate ice cream. That's awesome. Like, I think vanilla is dumb unless you had like chocolate chips and cookie dough bits. Like, then all right, it's fine. But like, it's like I don't want to sell carrying a pregnancy to term, like, and taking care of a child or adoption is like extra good options. It's like better choices. I want to sell abortion as an unthinkable choice. Okay, so focusing on while abortions should be illegal because it hurts women, I don't think gets me there. I don't think it's the best argument for making it illegal. Here's the worst one of all the 5. So I'm going pretty quickly here. So I've done your mother chose life, the Bible's pro-life, abortion hurts the economy, abortion hurts women. Here's the worst one. This is the one that, like, this is not even a true argument. Like, so never, ever, ever, ever use this argument. It's bad on so many levels. Think of all the Beethovens we've murdered in abortion. Or think of all the people who could have cured cancer. This is not a good argument on several levels. One, pragmatically, in fact, I'll give you a story on this. This actually happened relatively recently, and it made news. Do you remember in 2011 when Donald Trump was pretending to run for president? So during that thing, he did an interview with a Christian news service because he had said that he had changed his mind about abortion. He said that he used to be pro-choice and that he was now pro-life, which is a common thing for Republican politicians to say. And so, no comment. But so Donald Trump had said that, and maybe it's real. I don't know if he really did. But he was asked on a Christian news network, tell us about your conversion. And I've got the actual quote. This is what he said. Ready? Because what an opportunity to say, oh, well, I think clearly now, I just didn't realize the unborn are clearly alive. They're growing. We know that the unborn are human because they have human parents, and I think that human beings like you and me should have an equal right to life. That would have been awesome. But that's not what he said. He said, one thing about me, I'm a very honorable guy. I'm pro-life, but I changed my view a number of years ago. One of the reasons I changed, one of the primary reasons, a friend of mine's wife was pregnant, in this case married. She was pregnant and he didn't really want the baby. And he was telling me the story. He was crying as he was telling me the story. He ends up having the baby, and the baby is the apple of his eye. It's the greatest thing that's ever happened to him. And you know, here's a baby that wasn't going to be let into life. And I heard this and some other stories, and I am pro-life. He had the opportunity to make an equal rights argument for the unborn, and instead he grounded his pro-life views in irrelevance. Because here's how pro-choice people responded. I went on pro-choice blogs and read, and they responded exactly how you would think they would. Oh, I see. So because Donald Trump has a rich, probably white friend who thought about having an abortion but ended up not for some reason that we still don't know why, and because they like the kid, nobody should be allowed to have abortions. And they're right. That's not a good argument. It works both ways. I've seen this happen. I've seen pro-choice clever people see a pro-life person being like, yeah, but think of all the Beethovens. They're like, yeah, think of all the rapists we've aborted too. Think of all the mass murders. Like, this works both sides of the coin. But there's a deeper reason why we should avoid this argument. And I'm going to get just a little bit philosophical for a moment, so just buckle up and go with me. There's a huge difference between the pro-life worldview and many pro-choice people's worldview. The pro-life worldview is that human value is intrinsic, not instrumental. I'm going to explain what that means. We believe that human life is intrinsically valuable, which means that your value as a human being comes in virtue of the kind of thing you are. A valuable human being made in God's image. Many pro-choice people believe that human value is merely instrumentally valuable, meaning that they're mere carriers of what is valuable. So they're not valuable until they're sentient, self-aware, born maybe, have desires, able to feel pain. Like, those are the common kind of personhood views. So they say once you have that, you're in. But until that, you're not valuable as a human being. You're valuable. You become a person once you're able to do have these different properties. So do you see how this pro-life argument actually plays into the pro-choice worldview? It's acting like, well, look, think of all the wonderful symphonies we would have and the wonderful movies and the diseases cured if we didn't have abortion. We're acting like human value is instrumental, is based on what you provide to society. It's not. That's not why abortion is wrong. Abortion is wrong when it kills people who'd be bums, living in their parents' basement all their lives. It's just as wrong to have that abortion as it is to kill someone who maybe would have cured cancer. We're playing into the pro-choice worldview. It's not a biblical worldview at all. So never say that. Think of all the Beethovens we've murdered. So those are the arguments. Let me give you a few tactics I don't think are that helpful either, and then we'll do Q&A. Endless quibbling over terms with pro-choice people. Oh my gosh. Like, we have a limited amount of time, but here's how sometimes people end up spending that time. Are we going to call it a baby or an embryo or a fetus or an unborn? And like, that'll be the debate for 10 minutes before the person just gets frustrated and walks off. So, in fact, I saw a speech. I'm not going to tell you the organization because you've heard of them. I saw a speech. Someone give a speech like, here's how to dialogue. And she said, when she got to the part about labels, she said, never, if you're pro-life, never use the F word or the C word. She said the F word is fetus and the C word is choice. So this is not my view. Here's what I think. When I'm having a dialogue and starting that dialogue, I'm actually going to try to use neutral terms to not add more impediments to our already difficult conversation. There's enough hurdles. Our view is offensive enough. We're trying to make a medical procedure illegal and way more dangerous. Okay? So that's offensive enough. If I can get them to talk to me, I'm going to use neutral terms and so we can try to focus on the two issues that really, really matter. What is the unborn and how should we treat them? That's what I want to talk about. If we can talk about anything, that's what I'm picking. What label we're going to use for the entity that's killed in abortion, I don't care that much. Like, I care a little bit. I think language can be used as like a weapon, but most of the people I talk to aren't doing it that way. So I'm going to use terms that everybody uses. I'm not going to use baby in the beginning of the conversation. Why? Baby implies person. Baby implies valuable baby. So I'll just say embryo or fetus. I'll try to use like the biologically accurate term for whatever stage we're talking about. Now, every once in a while, they might, like, once again, be using it, like using those words in a, like they're trying to gain rhetorical points. Like, sometimes people use the word fetus like it's a curse word, like a fetus. It's like, well, when you say it that way, it's like there's a lot of stink on it the way you say it. Like, why? Like, what do you mean when you say the word fetus? Here's what I mean. I mean a human being at between week 10 and 40. That's when biologists call it a fetus. That's what I mean. There's a fetal human. There can be pig fetuses and cow fetuses and human fetuses. This is just, and then newborn and toddler and adult and So that's how I'm using terms. Now, after I've made a case that the unborn is human, is a person, I might start using baby. Because at that point, I'm not begging the question. I'm not assuming that my conclusion is true. I can start using baby when I've kind of earned the right to, when I've made a good argument that the unborn is a baby. I know some people use the word preborn instead of unborn. Some of my really good friends do. I don't, just because I think that word sounds kind of weird. I can see a pro-choice person here, a pro-life person, say, what do you think about the preborn? They're like, what's a preborn? Like, only pro-life people use that word. So I don't want to use a word that only pro-life people use. I want to use a word that everybody uses and stop having people like, what the heck is a preborn? It's unborn baby. Oh, okay, got it. Okay, yeah. What about this one? Pro-choice or pro-abortion or pro-abort? I'll tell you a story. So Live Actions has this big Facebook page, and there was this debate that I watched. It was fascinating. Someone had said something about how if we say pro-slavery, then we should be able to say pro-abortion too. And all these people responded, mainly positively. They're like, yeah, it's like they all piled on. In fact, someone was like, pro-abortion's too nice. Let's call them what they really are, pro-baby murder. And then this one guy jumps in. Oh, this poor guy did not know what he was getting into. And he's just like, I think there's a difference between pro the freedom to do something and pro that thing. And everyone ganged up on him. They're like, it's murder! What's wrong with you? It's totally murder! It's baby murder! And he's like, whoa, whoa, whoa! I'm just saying there's a difference between like maybe pro the freedom to smoke and pro, like I don't want people to smoke, but I think they should have like the right to smoke. I don't think it should be illegal. They jumped on him again. They're like, how dare you? You probably think abortion's okay for rape. And he's like, what? What happened? Did you read my words? There's not that many. They're right up there. It's like, what's happening? And I asked myself, like the attitude of the people that were attacking him, what is going on? And I'll tell you what I suspect is sometimes going on. I think sometimes that we want to objectify the other side because it makes us feel better. I think the more that you get to know pro-abortion choice people, the more that you'll see that there's very few of them that are actually pro-abortion. Most people, like there's pro-abortion people. There's some abortionists and some lobbyists. There's probably like 30 people who are pro-abortion. I think the rest are pro the choice to have an abortion. Like you could do this like whole hyphenated pro the choice to have an abortion. But that's really clumsy to say. So I just say pro-choice. Because typically that's what they want to be called. I want to call them whatever thing you want to be called, like we'll just use that if I have to use a label. Which, by the way, they're fleeing from that term. Do you know, Planned Parenthood did a whole campaign 2 years ago. They're trying to get pro-choice people to stop saying pro-choice. Like they know that's a losing word. And I've got pro-lifers emailing me, why would you say pro-choice in your blog post? They don't even like it. Like, what's the problem? This is what I think is at least most accurate, at least short term, for most people who just think that here's something that the government should not ban. And I just don't want that to become the debate. I don't really use labels at all. I never ask someone, are you pro-choice? I ask them, what do you think about abortion? I let them define for themselves what they believe, because people are more complicated than the labels we give them. So I let them define, what does that mean? If someone tells me they're pro-choice, I know almost nothing. I've had people call themselves pro-choice, but then if I ask enough questions, I find out they're actually completely pro-life except for rape. It's like, you wouldn't guess that when you hear someone say, I'm pro-choice. I know almost nothing when someone says they're pro-choice. I've got to ask a lot of questions to try to get into, like, what do you think? I want to know what you think. And it's usually going to be more nuanced than, I like abortion. It's not that often. Here's another thing that I think is, I've been speaking about this for the last year. I think sometimes we get something that we've been calling fetus tunnel vision. Here's what we define that to be. Fetus tunnel vision is the inability to see and or acknowledge human rights and injustices without equating or comparing them to abortion. The inability to see and or acknowledge human rights and injustices without equating or comparing them to abortion. So for example, these are your friends every 9/11 on Facebook. Yeah, 9/11 was bad. But do you know how many babies died today? 3,000. Every single year. These are the people who, and I've got friends who do this, all right? I'm still friends with some people who do it. We just disagree on this issue. But it's like every time there's like a school shooting, or any time where several people are killed, immediately that day, everyone think about how abortion's like this thing. And here's the problem. You have pro-choice friends on your Facebook list. And I don't think you're going to persuade a lot of people to become pro-life while comparing every single instance of multiple people dying to abortion. Here's why. It's going to come across to them like you only care about abortion. Like you only care about fetuses. So it's going to seem like your moral compass is broken. Like you only see one thing. And people aren't going to take your moral views seriously if they think your moral compass is broken. They won't have a reason to believe your moral compass is properly functioning if you're unable to authentically acknowledge. I'm not talking about faking compassion. Authentically acknowledge the horror of other human rights injustices. So on purpose, on my Facebook, I sometimes post stories about how horrible sex slavery is. For two reasons. One, I know that's actually a horrible, horrible thing and people should know about it. Two, I want my pro-choice friends to know that I know that sex slavery is a horrible, horrible thing. You understand? I want them to know what I know, which is that abortion is not the only human rights injustice. There's a lot of horrible, horrible things in the world. I'm focusing on abortion. It's one of the worst ones because this is the thing that I'm best at. But pro-choice people look at the 9/11 Facebook status. It's like, look at how much more horrible abortion is than this. And they think, well, yeah, of course we're upset about the 977 people who died on 9/11. We saw it on TV. Like it was horrifying. And we think they're people. By the way, they think those are people and not the unborn. Yeah. And so it's like, why can't you see how horrible 9/11 is? That's what they're thinking. And you've got to understand, I'm not saying that pro-life people don't get that. I think it's like never, I don't think I've ever heard of a pro-life person who actually said that we should not mourn those other tragedies. But what they say comes across to many people as devaluing one tragedy to elevate the one issue they care about. Let me say that again. It comes across. This is not what they actually intend, but it comes across like they're purposely devaluing one tragedy to elevate the one that they care about. So I think some pro-life individuals just need help at expressing well the sadness, the grief that they actually feel about these other issues. Now someone can respond, yeah, Josh, I don't have pro-choice friends on Facebook. Okay, first of all, you should. But okay, what if they're like, I don't have pro-choice friends on Facebook, so I'm not trying to persuade pro-choice people when I do these Facebook statuses. I'm just trying to get like my apathetic pro-life friends that aren't doing anything to do something. Okay, now that's a decent argument, but here's my response. When we talk to each other, we form habits. It forms habits about the way that we think about things. And I don't want to train pro-life people to hear about a big tragedy and immediately think, well, that's not as bad as abortion. I want pro-life people to have a proper amount of grief about all human rights injustices. Does that mean that we need to split our time like everyone needs to be working against everything? No, that would be stupid. So we need some people fighting abortion all the time. We need some people fighting sex slavery all the time. Those things have different reasons. And it's going to take different things to like abolish those two different things. So we should be effective. So we need some people on abortion, some people on sex slavery, some people fighting poverty and all of that. What I'm arguing is that we need to be able to see how horrible non-abortion injustices are and respond appropriately. And doing this publicly will have a side benefit of helping pro-choice people see that we're normal human beings who oppose injustice. And then it makes sense to them. Oh, that's why you're against abortion. You hate it when you think that human beings are being unjustly killed. I get it. Then they understand. And we get the opportunity to show abortion to be the injustice it is. Let me give you a related one that kind of falls within that umbrella, but I want to talk a little bit about this one because this is the one that we probably screw up the most, accidentally. We need to get good at acknowledging the horror of rape. You need to be able to acknowledge the horror of rape. This is going to come up in most of the conversations you have with pro-choice people. And the wrong response is, well, that's only 1% of abortions. Yeah, 1% of abortions is 16,000 women who were raped last year and chose abortion. They deserve to be talked about. So several years ago, I'm in the Denver airport on a layover. I sat across from a woman in her late 30s, a businesswoman, and she asked me what I do for a living. And I'm a pro-life speaker. So we started having this debate because she's like, I'm pro-choice. Like she threw the gauntlet down. And we talked about overpopulation for a while, and then she said, what about rape? And I took a cue from my mentor, Steve Wagner. I first acknowledged the horror of rape. I said, I think rape is one of the worst things that I know about. Like I get really angry when I think about rape. And I don't think our society understands how bad it is. Because sometimes we say things that implicitly blame the survivor of rape and not the guy who raped her. And I know rape happens to men too, but within the abortion conversation, we're always talking about female rape. And so we sometimes say things. I think the legal system is screwed up on this issue. We need to improve the way that we prosecute rapists and try to, if we can make that easier for the survivors, of course, we should do that. And imagine, like, if she gets pregnant. I mean, at that point, he's committed multiple moral crimes. He forced himself on her, but he's also forced her to become a mother. I don't think we should force people to become mothers, but now she is. And now she's going to make the most difficult decision of her life, probably. Which is because she's either going to carry to term. If she wants to do the right thing, like everyone does, then she's going to carry to term. So 9 months of pregnancy and a painful delivery. My wife will tell you. A painful delivery, and then either she's going to parent the child, which is a very expensive 18-year commitment, or she will offer the child up for adoption to a loving couple, which is a heroic, selfless act, but emotionally painful for most birth moms. Or she's going to make the wrong decision and hire a doctor to kill her child. He should get punished for all of that. He should be in jail for such a long time. And usually I'll just stop there. Notice I haven't even made my pro-life argument yet, precisely because there's there's a dual challenge going on. There's a relational challenge and an intellectual challenge. And our view at ERI is that you should not even respond to the intellectual challenge unless they bring you there. Sometimes they just need to hear you say that you hate rape. You think this should be obvious. It should be obvious, but it's not. Especially after some pro-life people who were well-meaning but off-putting went out and said things that imply that they don't care about rape. So you, especially you guys, it's not that surprising when you girls say that you think rape's bad. You men need to be able to talk about this well, because that'll be surprising. And then if they ask you, I get that you're against rape. Why is it you think it'd be wrong to have an abortion in that case? Okay, then I'm going to respond to that. I'm going to say, like, well, we both agree that an act of violence was done against an innocent person, the woman, and I don't think to help fix the problem, we should then add another act of violence toward another innocent person, the child. Like, I'm willing to have that. I'm willing to make that argument. But I've got to try to figure out, is this the right time? Am I supposed to plant that seed, or am I supposed to just cultivate some soil and someone else will plant the seed later? Because God loves this person way more than I do. Like, I trust God with her life, right? And so I don't always get to see the fruit. Sometimes I do, and that's awesome. But sometimes I cultivate soil, sometimes I plant, sometimes I water. And that's okay. You need to be able to acknowledge the horror of rape so they can understand that we are normal human beings who get it. I'll do one. No, I'm going to end there. I'm not going to do number 9. So the list again of 8. I don't think it's that helpful to say that your mother chose life, that the Bible's pro-life if you're talking to an atheist, that abortion should be illegal because it hurts the economy or Social Security, abortion should be illegal because it hurts women, that think of all the Beethovens we've murdered. And I don't think that we got to argue over terms when we're beginning a dialogue with a pro-choice person. I don't think we should get fetus tunnel vision, and I absolutely think you need to be able to acknowledge the horror of rape. So we have now about 10 minutes where I can take some questions. If you want to go deeper on one of those, that's fine. Or maybe you want to bring up one that's in your head of maybe potentially a faulty pro-life argument and that didn't make my list, and we could discuss that if you want. I'll leave that up to you. So just raise your hand and I'll call on you. Yes, in the back. What should we say to, so the question is, how should we dialogue with pro-life organizations that believe that abortion is okay in the case of rape? Well, there's not that many. I'm not sure who you're referring to. So like I know like secular pro-life has like split staff on this. Some staff are on one side of the issue and other staff are on the other, so they haven't taken an official position. So I'm not sure who you're referring to, but let's say there's a pro-life organization that's like everything's great, they're just really confused about this issue. Kind of depends on what my relationship is with them. I don't tend to just write emails to strangers anymore, because that's not been a very good use of my time in the past. I'm just like, here's all the reasons why you're wrong. You don't know me, but here's all the reasons why you're wrong. But if I could establish a relationship with them where I built some credibility, if I'm in the same town, I start like volunteering there and they get to know me and I've kind of bought in a little bit, and then I say, I've got this like one concern. It's like now the likelihood of them changing is greater. So yeah, that's pretty much probably what I would do. I mean, you can send an email if you want. It's just, I don't know if it's going to be that effective. It's probably not the first time they've gotten that email if they're actually a pro-life organization that is not pro-life in the case of rape. But once again, I'm not aware of one. But you could come up to me later and tell me, and I'd be interested in. But if you're going to say their name, you better be really sure that you're right, because I think there are some pro-life people that think that some guys are not pro-life in the case of rape because of the kinds of legislation that they propose, and I think that they're wrong. So I don't think I want you to say right now who you're thinking about. But come up to me at my booth later, and I'm kind of interested. Okay, next, in the back here, and then you. Okay, so I told you what not to do, what to do. All right, so yeah, you asked a really good question, so I'm going to do like 5 minutes on that, because that's a really good question. We came up, so this is like, I do whole talks on this subject, but I'm going to give you the short version of something that we discovered several years ago. J.P. Moreland at Biola uses an argument that we started trying to respond to people who don't think that the unborn is a person. And we just were testing it. It was like radically different from what we used to use to people who don't think that it's a person. And here's what happened. If you tracked my conversion rate, like a lot of people don't change their mind in one day, right? But some do. If you're really good and the stars align and like they haven't had an abortion, like there's a lot of different things. Here's what my conversion rate looks like. 3 years ago, we started using this argument and it went up like this. It's what I'm calling the most undervalued pro-life argument in the movement. And we call it the equal rights argument. And here's how it would go if you were pro-choice. I would say, everyone in this room, can we agree that everyone in this room has an equal right to life? Everybody's going to say yes. I'm going to ask why. Like, there's a lot of differences in here. I see right now some people who are tall, some people who are short, some people who are really, really smart, and some people who are, no offense, trying your best. Okay? And that's great. There's a lot of differences here. You got some people here that are good at music, some that are good at sports, some that are good at neither. There's all these differences. Why do we all have an equal right to life? Seems like probably it's because we all have at least one thing in common that we all have equally. This is really important. It's got to be something we all have equally, or else it won't explain why we have an equal right to life. What is it we all have in common? I think it's that we all have humanness in common. We're all equally human. So that would explain the data. That would explain a lot of data. That would explain why racism is wrong. Racism is wrong because it focuses on a surface difference that doesn't morally matter, and ignores the thing that we all have in common, the thing that does morally matter, that we're all human. It's the same reason why sexism is wrong. And so if the right answer to why everyone gets an equal right to life is that if you're a human, you get an equal right to life, and if the unborn are human, then the unborn should get an equal right to life. And here's the way that I said it. I did a speaking tour in Canada I'm going back next month, but they booked me in 8 high schools in 3 days. It was grueling. And they're a little bit pro-choice. You Portland people would identify with Canada people a bit in what it's like to be pro-life in Canada. And so Catholic high schools, I got a lot of pushback, but I was very careful to make this point. I wanted them to understand. I am not pro-life for emotional reasons. I am not pro-life because I get the warm fuzzies when I look at embryo pictures. I don't. An embryo to me looks like a fuzzy orange. I'm pro-life because one of the strongest intuitions that I have is that everybody in here gets an equal right to life. But I'm asking a deeper question about that. Why would that be? And then I'm applying that knowledge to this less obvious case to most of our society, the unborn. It's a common philosophy move. And it seems like the most rational conclusion I can come to is that the unborn should have an equal right to life. Unless I've just got the wrong answer. Now, there's things that they could say in response, and I've got really cool counter arguments, but I don't have time to do that. But that's basically the equal rights argument. I'm pro-life because I think that it matters to be human, because God made it matter to be human. Best tactic? There's a speech. If you want to hear me give some just practical dialogue tips, I actually did a speech recently that thanks to my brother's help, because he severely edited the speech for me, it became the best speech I've ever given in my life. I gave it 3 months ago at the Students for Life conference in DC. There's 2,400 college students in the room. And they asked me to not do apologetics. They asked me to just do practical, nitty-gritty dialogue tips. And I did 6 of them. And it was awesome. It's only like 26 minutes long. So if you go to equalrightsinstitute.com, like right there's a screenshot of me wearing different clothes doing a speech that looked like this. And if you click on that, you'll go to a YouTube video where you can see that. Those are my nitty-gritty. If you do those 6 things, you're going to have awesome dialogues. So that would be my response to that. We've got time for a few more. There's somebody here. Go ahead. And your question is?
What would be a better way to approach this?
That's a great question. All right, so the gentleman said, here's what I have found not to work when I see people with a sticker that says Black Lives Matter. It's to say, well, the unborn matter too. And that just doesn't end up going somewhere. I would ask him questions about the button. Why are you wearing that? It seems isn't it obvious that Black Lives Matter? Tell me, what is motivating you to wear the button? And we're probably going to end up in a discussion about civil rights. And that will really help us get to abortion. My brother was doing a poll table one time at Georgia Tech, one of the worst campuses to try to get dialogues on abortion on, because no one cares there. It's like a bunch of, math, science guys, and they just don't care. So Tim asked this guy walking by, hey, what do you think about abortion? And the guy's like, and just keeps walking. And then Tim calls out, do you have an opinion about racism? And the guy stopped, turned around and said, yes, I do. And so they end up in a dialogue about why racism is wrong. Racism is wrong because it focuses on a surface difference that doesn't morally matter and ignores the thing that we all have in common, which I think is the thing that morally matters, that we're all equally human. That's why Black Lives Matter. And that's why I'm pro-life, because I think all human lives matter. Black lives, women, the unborn. Gay people, all these people, they're people. They matter, and they should get equal right to life. That's how I think that'll go better. Thank you. One more question. So the question is, for someone who says that the unborn is like an aggressor against the woman, how do you respond to that? I would say it's not, and if her life's not at risk. If her life's at risk, then you can call it kind of an aggressor, like in an ectopic pregnancy, a tubal pregnancy. I've heard people call it like an innocent aggressor, and that's just a completely different issue, and I think we all understand that. But generally, like I would just say, like it seems like they don't understand how pregnancy works. I've got this friend named Dr. Michael Buritovitz who told me stuff I didn't ever know about how the beginning of pregnancy works. Like what we've learned about early fetal development is so cool. And so first of all, like the mother's body is so involved in making the pregnancy work. And here's one example of that. And this is oversimplified. This is like a biology guy trying to explain it to me how it works. So take that, but basically what happens is the child becomes alive, and 6 days later, it gets to the uterus. So you do your first water slide ride, basically. And then you get to the womb where you're going to hang out for 9 months, right? And you've got to implant. Some places in a woman's uterus are better to implant than others. They're not all equal. So what happens is the embryo touches up against a part of the uterus, and the mother's body sends a biochemical reaction that tells the embryo whether or not that's a good place to implant. It basically is saying a little down and to the left. And then, so there's this biochemical dance between an embryo and a mother's body. This is not, like some people call the embryo like a rapist, like it's violating my body without my rights. Like, I don't think that's how it works. But I'm going to try to find very friendly ways to explain that to them, like, well, let's take a look at the biology. What do embryologists do? Embryologists call it an aggressor, and I want to take a look at who are the experts? What do they say about the issue? And I don't think you're going to find them calling it an aggressor unless her life is at risk, which at that point is a different issue. Thanks for the question. Thank you, guys. God bless.